Today we're continuing our discussion of how we know without reasonable doubt that exposure of susceptible babies and children to acetaminophen is causing many, if not most, cases of autism. Today we're talking about lines of evidence number 15 and number 16, which are all about actual studies looking at what happens when we do expose small children to acetaminophen. Do they have more autism or do they not? So line of evidence number 15 is taken from a small study by Stephen Schultz. It's called a case control study. So he's comparing kids with autism with kids without autism and seeing how much acetaminophen did they get from 12 to 18 months. And so what he found was if you got exposed to acetaminophen between 12 and 18 months of age, you're 20 times more likely, and that's a huge amount, 20 times more likely to have autism spectrum disorder compared to kids who did not get acetaminophen between 12 and 18 months of age. So that's a big clue. Now, that was published way back in 2007. Why didn't that study attract a lot of attention? Well, it's a small case control study, and basically people didn't know what to make of it, so they just dismissed it. And now we've got 19 more lines of evidence that are telling us what's going on. So we know this one is an important study. It was unfortunate that we just missed this one. So the next line of evidence is analysis of a giant data set called the Danish National Birth Cohort data set, looking at what happens when we give acetaminophen. Do we have more autism? Now, what they saw was a 30% increase just in autism in general, not specifically regressive autism. Remember I said the Schultz study looked at regressive autism, and that's kind of autism that happens when some developmental milestones are met and then the child regresses backwards and loses that development. So this line of evidence number 16 with the Danish National Birth Cohort is looking at just all autism in general. They saw a 30% increase. Now, 30% is a lot of increase with heavy use of acetaminophen, but it's not a huge amount. It's obviously not something we want to have, but our analysis of that data set shows two things. First of all, they weren't doing a good job of measuring exposure to acetaminophen, almost certainly. It's profoundly undermeasured. And secondly, for a number of reasons, they're going to profoundly underestimate the amount of autism that's due to acetaminophen in that study. So we think that 30%, while that would be caused by itself to say, wait a minute, we need to reanalyze use of this drug, it's a profound underestimate, and it just doesn't match any of the other data that we have. And so what we did was we ran computer simulations literally with a bunch of data and showed it's not accurate. That number is just way too low. And that was published in our paper in Minerva Pediatrics, the whole entire study working with statisticians and computer analysts that were able to generate these data sets and find out that, well, we can't trust that number. So bottom line, evidence number 15, number 16, when you actually look at does acetaminophen affect the propensity for autism, the answer is yes, it does.